The blockade of HIP 22460 was successful and the system was liberated. The campaign for the California Nebula begins. Finance Fridays of the Anti-Xeno Initiative return in January, and the Xenostrike Force sets a membership limit of 300. Some of the news and more that we will be discussing today. First and foremost, many of you will already have noted that the campaign, or rather the blockade of HIP 22460, which was possibly one of a dangerous, biggest player-driven events, was humongously successful and recognized as such by Frontier Developments in freeing and liberating the system and publishing an associated galnet that declares the system free from Thargoids, while also placing a blockade debris field in orbit where the battle took place. Approximately 1,500 commanders participated in the event, which was a lot of fun and, again, quite remarkable in what it managed to achieve, despite the fact that it was set out to really just be a piece of fun of a group of players in the game. So kudos to Frontier Developments for engaging the community in this regard, and kudos to all who participated in making this possible. Now that HIP 22460 has been liberated, the campaign moves to the California Nebula. That is the only place where anti-Xeno combat zones are still active, and the Xenostrike Force this past weekend has already begun operations in the area, as have many commanders who have moved over there. Note that the California Nebula is somewhat far from the bubble, as it's somewhere in a range of 600 to 700 light years, depending on where you are. So you'll need to make 2 cryo jumps if you want to head over there. But nevertheless, it is currently the best place to conduct anti-Xeno operations, as the only other options are the nebulae in non-human signal sources, where the best and the most you're going to find is typically a single interceptor, a certain number of distress calls, where you're going to find at most 2, and damaged megaships, where you're going to find somewhere between 1 and 2, but with somewhat erratic spawns. So right now, most anti-Xeno forces are converging on the California Nebula. Now, as part of that, I also want to address some degree of minor, and I will personally call it minor, others will disagree and have a different point of view, controversy surrounding the activities that have been happening lately in the game, with some criticism that we drove Frontier Developments to liberate the most active system in the game as far as Thargoid spawns are concerned, and thus denied people a training ground for interceptor combat in HIP 22460. Now, let me be crystal clear about that. No one was training in HIP 22460. Absolutely and literally nobody. If you want to train, head to Asterope, and that's the best place to train in solo interceptor combat. If you want to train in multigoid interceptor combat with a couple of interceptors, distress calls are the place to do that. If you want to get some additional action and get 2 interceptors cycling in and out that continuously spawn, that's what damaged megaships are for. If you want to train in wing combat, that's what we just discussed at the California Nebula and the anti-Xeno combat zones that exist there. That's what they are for. So anybody who made the argument that we're denying people an ability to train in a system, in what used to be the hardest system in the game, where an anti-Xeno, where an anti-Guardian field zone was active and thus modified Guardian weapons could not be used, in addition to being a place where 3 interceptors cycling constantly spawned, and furthermore of a harder variant, is just, candidly, I will say, I don't think they know what they're talking about. Like, that's not a place where anybody was training. Like, even our more advanced commanders, including myself, were training elsewhere. So let's not make that argument, because that argument just does not hold water. Or rather, make that argument, but appreciate that I would argue a majority of the anti-Xeno community would disagree with that argument. So that's one point. The other argument that we've heard is that we should kind of hold off from the California Nebula campaign because we don't want Frontier Developments to further recognize our activities and shut those down, resulting in us having even fewer options as far as anti-Xeno combat is concerned. Now, again, I don't know how you feel about it, but by that argument, we probably should not have bombed the Titans to begin with, because now we no longer have Titans to go and bomb. But that's kind of a point of a game. It's like to actually move the ball forward and perform and engage in these activities in a way that makes you a bunch of credits in the process, while also advancing human activities against hostile aliens and xenos, as you will. So I understand some people may want to make that argument, but it is certainly not an argument I find convincing, nor a point of view that I share. So on to California we go. And with that, and very linked and tied into the California Nebula campaign commencing, Commander Xarian of the Anti-Xeno Initiative, famous among other things, well, he's famous because he's an amazing Corvette pilot in his own right, but besides being an amazing Corvette pilot in his own right, he has been the host of some of our most popular events of the Anti-Xeno Initiative, which were the so-called Finance Fridays. Finance Fridays were events hosted each Friday where a group of more experienced commanders took the lead in arranging instances for commanders to join and participate in bug hunting, which, in addition to being a ton of fun, also earns people a disproportionately high amount of credits. Now, we just did this with a very, very high-end group with Xeno Strike Force this past weekend, and I didn't quite measure it, but I think it's fair to say that we averaged somewhere in the range of $1 billion an hour, and we weren't really even trying that hard. We could have gone for something even higher than that, but still, I think that's somewhat of a upper bound and unrealistic expectation for people. Nevertheless, if you're joining a Finance Friday, I think it's entirely reasonable to expect to be making somewhere in the range of 200 to 300 million, even if you're not an experienced commander, even if you're not in the best instance. So still, pretty good money as far as what most people in the game are used to. In addition, it's also a ton of fun and a great experience. So there's already 250 or ballpark people signed up for this event. It will be different from a blockade. This time, having also learned that lesson, we're not going to try and cram 200 people into a given instance. We'll let the game do its own thing and let the game form the instances automatically. So it's going to be less of a structured and organized event and more of an organic event as far as Anti-Xeno is concerned. It all is going to be in the Anti-Xeno Initiative private group, which has increased protections with regards to behavior of bad actors in the game. So it's not going to be gang-proof. There's always going to be somebody who sneaks in and attempts to disrupt activities, but hopefully we'll manage, like we did last time, to contain that to a minimum and deal with it promptly. So yeah, I encourage you to sign up and join Finance Friday, the first Finance Friday of 2025. It's a ton of fun. And by the way, it is also in the California Nebula, so it will be part of our ongoing campaign in the California Nebula, if you will, which is also an incredibly remarkable visual place. As you can see, Barnes Loop, and you're in this majestic red nebula space all around you. So if you haven't been there, I will argue it's worth seeing for yourself, let alone fighting interceptors there. It's just a remarkable environment, such a remarkable space. So go ahead, enjoy Finance Friday. Good luck and happy hunting on that front. In other news, we have also announced that the Xeno Strike Force, which, as many of you will be aware, is a friendly partner of the Anti-Xeno Initiative, but somewhat more specialized in nature, in that it specializes specifically in the art of wing-based combat and has some specific and additional restrictions compared to the more casual and bigger Anti-Xeno Initiative, has decided to cap its membership at 300 members total. We're currently at around 230, so there's still some room for growth. And by the way, as we go, we will make space with inactive players being removed after a while if they consistently don't participate, as the purpose and intent of Xeno Strike Force is to create an active and engaged community focused and revolving around events and participating wing-based combat together. Versus the Anti-Xeno Initiative, which instead is a humongous, much larger and much casual umbrella group, if you will, which is welcoming and will never implement something like this. It will never, the Anti-Xeno Initiative is and will continue to remain open to all, regardless of the number of people who want to join. Right now, my lookout here, but the numbers are very different. Right? The number of members in the anti-Xeno initiative right now are 27,751. So a slightly different scale. So don't worry, you won't never be excluded. Even if a Xenostrike force is full, you'll find a spot in the anti-Xeno initiative. And if you're really motivated, I'm sure you're going to find a spot in the Xenostrike force as well. With that, that concludes our bug hunting news for today. Go to mankind, Commander Mechan, over and out.